What does the Bible say about anxiety? Everyone deals with stress or anxiety at some point in their lives, including the people we read about in the Bible. I'm Jonathan Watt with Atara Group International. We hope you're enjoying our series on mental health. And if you are, please press the like button and subscribe to our channel. So it's only natural to feel worried about something when you're unsure or you feel as if you don't have any control over an outcome. Here are some examples from the Bible of people who experienced anxiety and stress about their life circumstances, their callings, and their life situations, which were out of their control. These stories are about great men and women whose lives have filled the pages of the Bible, yet they still experienced anxiety as we do today. So think about these stories and see how they may apply to your life, and you'll realize you're not the only person who has felt this way or faced difficult situations. Take strength from the faith and strength from God in the midst of it all. Let's take the case of Martha, Luke chapter 10. Story goes like this. Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to Jesus and she asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you're worried and anxious about many things. A few things are needed, or indeed only one. And Mary has chosen what's better, and it will be not taken from her. See, Martha, the sister of Mary and Lazarus, was hosting a dinner for Jesus and some of the disciples in her home. And she was focused on being a good hostess for all. After all, this was Jesus, her good friend and famous teacher and healer. Everything had to be just right. The house, the food, the wine. Her sister Mary, however, was not nearly as focused on helping as taking the time to listen to Jesus' teachings. The entire situation brought Martha great anxiety, and many of us have experienced that same anxiety. Let's say if we're hosting in our home or at a church, and Jesus reminded Martha that worshiping God and learning about God are more important, and that no person should have those things taken from them. Martha needed to learn balance using her spiritual gifts of service, but with her own need to be fed spiritually. Sometimes we get caught up in our service, and that brings us anxiety. Let's take another case Gideon, Judges chapter 6. Quote here When the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, The Lord is with you, mighty warrior. Uh, Pardon me, my Lord, Gideon replied, but if the Lord is with us, why has all this horrible things happened to us? Where are all of his wonders that our ancestors told us about when they said, Did not the Lord help us out of Egypt? But now the Lord has abandoned us and given us into the hand of Midian. And the Lord turned to him and said, Go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you? Pardon me, my Lord, Gideon replied, but how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest of Manasseh. I'm the least in the family. And the Lord answered, I'll be with you, and you'll strike down the Midianites, leaving some alive, leaving none alive. Gideon then said, If now I have found favor in your eyes, give me a sign that it's really you talking to me. Please do not go away until I come back and bring my offering and set it before you. And the Lord said, I'll wait until you return. Gideon went inside, prepared a young goat, and from an ephah of flour he made bread without yeast. He put the meat in the basket and the broth in the pot, and he brought them out and offered to him under the oak. And the angel of the Lord said to him, Take the meat and the unleavened bread, place them on this rock, and pour out the broth. And Gideon did so. And the angel of the Lord touched the meat and the unleavened bread and the tip of the staff that was in his hand, and fire flamed from the rock, consuming the meat and the bread. And the angel of the Lord disappeared. Now, when Gideon realized that it was the angel of the Lord, he exclaimed, Alas, sovereign Lord, I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face. But the Lord said to him, Peace. Do not be anxious nor afraid. You are not going to die. So, what's the picture here? Well, Gideon was fearful and anxious about leading the Israelites into battle with their enemies, the Midianites, and he doubted himself and his tribe and even God to be able to succeed and make them victorious over these formidable enemies. Gideon first challenged God and accused him of abandoning the Israelites. As we put it, it was his anxiety talking. But he asked God for a sign and reassurance. And to calm his anxiety and fear, he asked God to be with him and guide him. And in spite of his fear and anxiety, Gideon received God's assurance and was able to lead the Israelites to a miraculous victory. Now, many of us have received callings which made us nervous, caused us to be anxious, made us doubt about our own abilities to succeed. Maybe it wasn't a literal battle you faced, maybe it was some type of ministry or education or mission. Each of us have been called by God for a purpose. God insists He'll not abandon us as we fulfill His ordained callings. Let's take another example. Peter, in an account that appears in Matthew chapter 14. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them. This is when some of the apostles are fishing out on Lake Galilee, and Jesus was walking on the lake. And when the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said. They cried out in fear and anxiety. But Jesus immediately said to them, Take courage, it's I. Don't be afraid or anxious. Lord, if it is you, Peter replied, tell me to come to you on the water. Come, he said. So Peter got out of the boat, walked on the water, came toward Jesus, and then when he saw the wind, he was afraid and he began to sink, calling out, Lord, save me. Immediately Jesus reached out his hand, grabbed him, and said, You of little faith, why did you doubt? Well, Peter is one of Jesus' closest apostles and disciples, yet he still experienced fear and anxiety. And when he was walking on water and he had faith in Jesus, he was able to do what we would consider normally impossible. It was only when he listened to the wind and the waves and was distracted by all the storm around him that he lost faith, began to sink with fear and anxiety. So when Peter lost focus on Jesus and began to focus more on the dangers around him, he began to sink. We sometimes are sort of in the same position. We do the same thing, not having enough faith, imagining that our task is impossible. On the other hand, when we keep our eyes on Jesus, we're able to connect to God's power and find that peace and calm through Him. When we lose the focus, our world becomes a terrifying place with chaos and where tasks seem overwhelming and anxiety is provoking us. So, what does the Bible say about anxiety? We're starting to explore that. Anxiety is a natural and common human emotion. The Bible illustrates how anxiety can arise in many situations danger, uncertainty, feelings of inadequacy, at times when we listen too much to outside circumstances. However, the Bible and God will extend to us a persuasive answer to anxiety. Both God and the Bible provide assurances and guidance on how to overcome anxiety. Although we've given just a few examples here today, there are many more stories throughout the scriptures, Old and New Testament, which remind us that anxiety and fear need not have control over our lives. But it's also modeled in these stories that when that we should not dismiss or ignore our anxiety. We're taught through the scriptures to face our anxiety and trust in God's power and love for each of us. God reassures believers He is with us, we're not alone, and that He is the source of our peace and courage. So ask help from a Tara group if you're wanting to pursue these things. Is anxiety something which you struggle with? Have you attempted to face it and maybe need help to do so? At Atara Group International, we're committed to partnering with you to overcome your anxiety. If this is something you've been struggling with, visit our website and look at the profiles of our coaches and spiritual advisors and perhaps schedule a 15-minute consultation with us. It's for free. What should you do if you are in an emergency right now? If you are experiencing a mental health crisis, such as suicidal thoughts, a severe stress, an acute mental health episode, it's essential that you seek help immediately and get assistance from a qualified mental health professional or emergency service, such as the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. You can reach them promptly at just dialing 988, or you can dial 1 800 273 TALK for talk. And if you prefer or need to do something like texting in an emergency, you can text HOME to 741 from anywhere in the United States 24/7, and it's confidential, and a crisis text line specialist is there to help you. They're trained to do this. They're volunteer crisis counselors who will receive your text and respond and do all of it through a secure platform. The volunteer crisis counselor is there to help you and help you move from a hot moment to a cool, calm situation.